My name's Katie. This is my demonstration for public speaking class. Many of us have lived here for years, decades, even a lifetime, and are unaware how truly unique our home is. For instance, did you know Virginia Beach is home to the very first lighthouse, or the oldest surviving brick home? Having lived here my entire life, I am very passionate about my home and its history. My goal is for you to leave here today with a renewed interest for Virginia Beach and a new knowledge of some of the aspects on how it came to be. With all the progression and development that has occurred over the years, it may be easy to overlook our rich history. But I'm here to remind you what sets Virginia Beach apart from other places. Long before the days of strip malls and skyrise hotels, there was a different kind of native in Virginia Beach. These people being the Chesapeake Indians, the real locals of this area. Many of our area's names reflect that heritage, including Pungo, which was named after their chief, Machi Pungo. However, when the Susan Constant, the Godspeed, and the Discovery would set sail for America from England, the beginning of a new era would emerge. On April 26, 1607, they would land at Cape Henry and erect a wooden cross before moving on to the Jamestown settlement. This area would go on to become known as First Landing, but it would not be until 14 years later that the English would return to make a new home in Virginia Beach. One of the earliest residents, Adam Thurgood, eventually gave name to the Lynnhaven River, after it reminded him of his beloved home in Kingsland, England. The river was the foundation for life in the early Virginia Beach, as well as all transportation was done on the water. Every family had a boat and every farm had a landing. Another early resident is Adam Keeling, who is actually responsible for the formation of Lynnhaven Inlet. You see, back then Lynnhaven Inlet and the Chesapeake Bay were not connected due to a sandbar that separated the two. Keeling and his men took it upon themselves to dig a ditch through this sandbar, and after a severe storm struck, rushing waters cut through the ditch and enlarged it to become the Lynnhaven Inlet. This caused the river to flood and more inland settlements to be developed in Dam Neck, London Bridge, and Pungo. For those of you less intrigued by colonial history, Virginia Beach also holds stories of witches, wild wolf packs, and even pirates. We are all familiar with Grace Sherwood, the Witch of Pungo. She was accused of witchcraft in 1706 and was taken to the end of a dirt road to be ducked in the water as trial. The site of this being the current Witch Duck Road. Grace did free herself, was jailed, but later released to live out the remaining years of her life in her old Pungo home. Not only were there witches, but wild wolf packs did pose an actual threat on the men and livestock of colonial Virginia Beach. Many pits or snares were dug to trap these wolves, and one area in particular held a large number of these pits, a plantation that still stands to this day, the Wolf Snare Plantation. Which brings us to the pirates. Before the Cape Henry Lighthouse was constructed in 1791, which actually is the first lighthouse to be built in the United States and the first federal building to be constructed, they had a different system for directing ships into safety. For quite some time, men would burn continuous bonfires on a large sandhill every night at Cape Henry. Well, this attracted the attention of pirates, including the most notorious Blackbeard. He and his men would kill the volunteers tending the fire and set up mock fires which would lead ships to run aground and fall victim to the pirates. Blackbeard actually occupied an island in Joyce Lake, located off Pleasure House Road, by trenching off a tip of the land where him and his crew would seek out unsuspecting ships in the bay. To this day, this island is known as Treasure Island, is still undeveloped, actually for sale, and said to be the home of Blackbeard's treasure. Nearly 100 years after the construction of the lighthouse, the U.S. Life Saving Service would be established. After this, in the early 1800s, 4 main lifeguard stations would be built every 7 miles down the coast from Cape Henry to the North Carolina-Virginia border. The lifesavers and their families would be the first full-time residents of what once was barren wilderness along the Atlantic coast. These men saw the potential of this beautiful beach community and soon capitalized by building hotels and casinos. The most popular station, being the SeaTac station located off 24th Street, would be largely responsible for the beginning of the making of a resort town. The late 1800s would be the first boom of our resort town. The railroad was built and bringing in people from Norfolk. The first streets were paved with seashells. Cottages and hotels line the beach, along with our first wooden boardwalk stretching from 12th to 16th Street. One of the earliest and most prestigious hotels being the Princess Anne Hotel, built in 1885. Complete with a ballroom, bowling alleys, billiards, and tennis courts, this hotel truly was an architectural gem of its time. Sadly, it would see its demise in a 1904 fire, but would set the bar for the construction of an equally prestigious hotel that would be built years later. In 1927, this was a year to remember for Virginia Beach. The Cavalier, which was named after the pioneers of men that settled here in the very beginning, was done at a cost of $1.5 million and was one of the most famous hotels along the Atlantic coast. This year also marked the completion of the concrete boardwalk, of which still remains today. But where some things have remained the same, much has changed over time. The resorts would evolve from cottages to massive hotels, counties would merge together, and the railroad would all but disappear. The days of the old Virginia Beach would vanish to make way for yet another era of its history, the one we are all living today. Although the past may seem harder to find in our modern-day Virginia Beach, as most of it has fallen victim to the wrecking ball, there still are places that remained locked in time. Many of the places I have spoken of are still around and even available to the public, such as the Adam Thurgood Home, which is the oldest brick home surviving in America, the Adam Keeling House, the SeaTac Life-Saving Station, both Cape Henry lighthouses, and so on. But lastly, the Cavalier, which even as the oldest hotel at the oceanfront, will always remain the most beautiful. As I ask you to take advantage of these places and realize how blessed we are to live in a place with such amazing history, for there are no places in the world quite like Virginia Beach.